Senate Transportation Committee will come to order. Could you take the roll, please?
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. Ms. Wallmeyer, are you there?
I am here in Goochland, so.
There you go. Goochland is a good place to be. Thank you so much. We will then proceed. The only bill we have before us today that has to go to Finance, if it passes out of here, is Senator Stewart's bill. So with that, we starting off here with Senator Bell, 1259, I believe it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill has been here a bunch, some form of it or another, over the years. It is about the Dulles Greenway, and I'll tell you, this is an unusual road, complicated. It's basically the first public-private partnership that was formed in Virginia, and I will tell you, at the time it was done, I don't think anybody realized how much Loudoun County would grow and the importance of this road. For those of you who don't live in the area, this is a 14-mile toll road, and it is really a main east-west road. People take it. It's you pay the full toll whether you take one exit, which could be as little as a quarter mile, or 14 miles. There's a peak toll and a off-peak toll, and $1 of it goes to the MWA for the airport, Silver Line. This is it's paying $6 plus for one exit is an issue, and we've been around and around with this. The county's been to court a number of times over this road, and people from both parties have done a variety of legislation. There's a couple things I'm going to point out that are very different this year. Number one, we are all the elected delegation, Democrats, Republicans, in the General Assembly and back at the county level are all on the same page. We collaboratively worked on this piece of legislation. We did a press conference before we came down here, and we all agree. That's a difficult thing to do, but we all came to the agreement based on everything we've learned over the years. The other thing which is unique is we just had an SEC examiner do a report and basically gave us a roadmap which was incorporated in this piece of legislation that tells us all the things that they really needed. The SEC, frankly, has reviewed these toll increases. They're primarily equipped to look at things like increase on utilities. So this is a bit of a different animal for them. So there's a number of things that are in here that really we found are very important to make sure any toll increase requests are done in a fair way. One is it requires a examination of the basic financial fitness and creditworthiness. I will tell you we did some negotiating with Trip 2, and we have compromised on that point a little bit. It also says that any toll rates that are not reasonable to the user in relation to the benefit obtained and materially discourage the use of the roadway or prohibit the operator more than a reasonable return are contrary to the public interest. This is something we've clarified. We also put a lot of time into the material discourage use paragraph that's in the bill, mainly because this has been a point of contention both in court cases and in the rate cases have gone before the SEC. I should also point out that this bill is a version. It's changed a little bit based on what we learned from the SEC examiner. Is a bill that was presented in years past. I think every member of the Republican caucus was a co-patron on the bill. It has grown since then. Right now, from, again, an electorate perspective, we're all on board. One of my former political opponents has been a hard worker on this, Delegate David Ramadan, and I texted with him this morning. I think he'll be on the call to speak to it. I appreciate his leadership and involvement on this. And I applaud everyone who's been a part of this effort to get us here today because it's been a tough one. I will tell you, we have tried to negotiate this. We don't agree on everything. But this bill that's before you today is I actually will have to ask you to move the substitute, is exactly the same as just reported out of House Transportation 19-0. That in itself is a huge statement. And we want to make sure that, again, this coalition stays together and we put a framework where fairness will be held for the commuters. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions you
Mr.
committee might have.
The substitute.
Move the substitute.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed?
No, Mr. Chairman, because all I got is a blank page.
Uh-oh. That happened to me yesterday.
I'll get out and try again, but that'll be the third try.
Anybody else having trouble?
It shows a link, but it doesn't, when you click through, it's not getting loaded.
No, no preview available.
Mr. Chairman, let me take it down and try to post it again. Apparently, there's something technical.
We'll stand at ease until Lisa Wellmeyer reposts. Senator Bell, while we are, could you direct me to where in the bill it directs the SEC to conduct yearly rate reviews?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, let me pull it up myself.
Mr. Chairman, the bill appears to be posted now. Sorry, I don't know what happened, but it's there now.
All right, could somebody check and see if we've got the substitute? We good? All right, the substitute is before us. Senator Cosgrove, you have it?
Nope.
Nope.
SB 1259. I'm using
Mr. Chair, sometimes I have to open and close the link to the substitute to get words to actually show.
Okay.
refresh.
All those in favor of killing more trees next year? Could I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting, may I make a comment? Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I just want to thank Senator Bell for his leadership on this. I represent both ends of the Greenway toll road, and I can tell you that I have constituents who spend upwards of $400 a month on just transportation costs getting to and from their work. This is incredibly important to our community and in all of the northwestern Fairfax and eastern Loudoun County. I just really appreciate the hard work that Senator Bell has put through this, as well as all of the stakeholders in Loudoun County, and looking forward to finally having some consensus and solution to this longstanding problem.
Boysko, and it gets tougher all the time for the Greenway out there because of the improvements to Route 7 and the removal of lights. The alternative passages just get better. So.
Mr. Chairman, to answer your question, if you go, I don't know if you all have this populated or not, but lines 53 to 57, and here's where the issue is. The way it's defined, and again, this is really a very important paragraph. Materially discouraged use means causing a decrease in traffic at 3 or more percentage points based on either a change of potential road. I won't read the rest to you, but as you see the way that's defined, it doesn't say whether that's 1 year, 5 years, et cetera. So it would apply to if the rate increase request went to the SEC for a multi-year period, it would just be for 3 or more percentage points of growth if it had that impact. So where this became a 1 year versus multi-year is during the negotiations with Trip 2. There was a desire from Trip 2, and I don't want to speak for them. I know they'll have representation on here with Miles or someone, that they wanted it per year specified. So if you were to do 3 percentage points per year over, for instance, a 5-year increase compounded, that would be more than 15% growth. Now, there was a compromise position offered to lower it to 2 percentage points, and we also discussed even making it a staggered difference. But in response, and we've worked closely with Loudoun County and their representatives, they would like to keep this at just annual, so those would be, it would not be advantageous to submit something for more than 1 year since it would be held to this 3%. So, and over multi-years in a high-growth area that grows by 30 people a day, it would be pretty easy to meet that threshold. So that's why we are where we are, and Loudoun County would prefer to keep it the way it is.
So,
Chairman.
My concern, Senator Bell, was was that the SEC could be burdened yearly with a reevaluation. Would that be the case here?
Well, it would only be the case if the Trip 2 partners were to do a rate increase every year. They could also choose not to do one.
You know, our SEC is in a situation where we've given them so much energy regulation work to do that, you know, to burden them with something like this, which is outside of their regular scope of duties, and have to do it yearly. But we'll think on that a little bit. Anyone else? Anyone have a question for Senator Bell?
Mr. Chairman,
Who we got?
Stanley.
Senator Stanley.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, question of the patron. Does this take care of the rate base issue? That is, somebody gets on and gets off the first exit. I remember when I was representing Delegate Ramadan before the SEC, that one of our big contentions was that someone would get on there and pay the full freight and only drive 1/10 of a mile, or whenever the first exit was. Does this address this?
Mr. Chairman, this provides the framework to address that, and that's something we thought about very hard. You're talking about distance-based pricing, which is very, very much what the county and the residents want, and it's communicated to me very frequently. I would actually direct you to lines 82 through 94, which really go into depth about that, and this was the language that, again, Loudoun County and the representatives helped us to look at very carefully. It doesn't mandate that distance-based pricing would be done, but it does set up that framework that would lead it in that direction.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley?
And based on this, I know that the chairman asked you, Senator Belt, that one of the things that might be a concern is that if the rate increase was requested every year and the SEC had the oversight, which it already does, that would kind of clog up the system. But would you not agree with me that based on its prior review through the prior delegate and my representation of that delegate, that it has actually all of the knowledge in its possession already, and really the singular issue would be if they were seeking a rate-based increase would be reflective upon pre-filed testimony related to amount of traffic that was there, length of use of the traffic using, where they're getting on and getting off, and things like that that are almost easily plugged into what's already been determined through its formal 5-day formal investigation in the previous thing with Delegate Ramadan?
Mr. Chairman, I always worry when someone says, wouldn't you agree with me? In this case, I would, because there is a large collection of testimony and information, and frankly, the analysis in that scenario you just explained would be what other changes may have happened to corollary roads, et cetera. And that would be, I think, a much lesser burden for the SEC than looking at everything from scratch, which they would not be doing.
Mr. Chairman, final question.
Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the gentleman, would also then, having this kind of review and oversight, which it's not had based on the prior code sections, would this not have an eventual and positive consequence of that this would take some pressure off the feeder roads that are around that are around the toll road itself, and thereby easing congestion in that part of Loudoun County?
Mr. Chairman, that would be my hope. And frankly, as I said at the beginning, the materially discouraged has been the paragraph where court cases and rate increases have held up, because it was something that wasn't clear for the people who had to make that decision, and I think this clarifies that. And material discouraged would basically mean, this may sound ridiculous, but there are people in my district, and 1 or 2 exits, which they can do quickly if they choose to pay the $6 plus toll, would take them 45 minutes if they went on one of those corollary roads. And somebody would say, well, why would they pay that? Well, if you're coming home from work and you have a child in daycare, and if you're late to pick up your child and you get charged $5 a minute, well, then it's better for you to pay that toll. But it's still a difficult thing because there really just aren't other roads available for folks. So I agree with the point you're making, if that makes sense, my answer, Mr. Chairman.
And I thank the gentleman, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other questions? Senator Spruill.
The question was, someone sustaining ask a question, that if you pay the full price to get on and get off at the first exit, and you said it's in the framework, what do you mean by that?
Mr. Chairman, it's a 14-mile road, and if you get on and drive the whole 14 miles, you pay there's a peak rate and an off-peak. You pay the same rate if you get on one exit and go a quarter mile and get off. So if you were to drive 14 miles, you pay $6.70 versus one exit, you pay $6.70. It's one price regardless of how long you go. It's not per use, and the previous question was more about distance-based pricing. So if you want a small pizza, you can't buy it. You're still paying for a large pizza if you want to eat pizza.
Thank you.
Senator Bell, other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. Senator Bell, I'd bring your attention to the last paragraph.
Mr. Chairman, clarification, are we talking about on line 146?
Actually, lines 144 through 149 on my substitute here.
Starting with no comprehensive agreement?
No, prior to refinancing existing debt.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm there.
Okay.
Senator Cosgrove.
All right. No place in here does it actually say, the term of a bond that can be issued, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And then, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, trying to make sure I understand your question, but
Let me ask an easier question. It says the bond cannot go beyond the expiration of the operator's current certificate of authority. When does that current ticket of authority run out?
Mr. Chairman, the current agreement with the Commonwealth is through 2056. So one of the issues, and I know Senator Stanley can certainly speak to this, as well as the people from Loudoun County, there's a tremendous amount of debt, over $1 billion. And if debt is increased, it would increase the operating expenses of the road, which could then lead the SCC to basically grant toll increases in cases where that debt increase had no benefit to the commuter. So that's what we're really trying to address here. There were a couple of things I think, I don't want to criticize those who made this deal. It's been a long time. And like I said, there were many things they couldn't have thought of. I think one of the things that has gotten us where we are today is thinking about the massive growth in this area, number one, and number two, what happens if this road changes hands? Because if it changes hands and more debt is taken out, then in fact that could be used to raise tolls. And this puts protections in to make sure, number one, there is an oversight if the operators choose to take more debt out, because that would impact toll rates. And number two, debt couldn't be taken out beyond 2056 when this road reverts to the Commonwealth ownership. Because if there was debt beyond that, that would be a problem for the Commonwealth.
For me, Mr.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. If the authority decides that they want to go with distance tolling and to say, all right, you go to the first exit, you're only going to be charged $1 or whatever, is that going to have a lowering effect on the amount of money that comes into that toll road? Yeah, I know some people may use it more, others are just going to keep using it like they were before, but paying $5 less, et cetera, et cetera. Has that been built into this someplace?
Mr. Chairman, this is something I know I personally studied. I know a number of others have studied this. And frankly, it goes back to, in my opinion, Business 101. How many widgets do you sell at $2 versus $20? In many cases, I think ridership would increase if the road were at a lower price and people could use it at an affordable rate. I mean, frankly, what I hear from constituents and me personally, if I can make a trip and not pay the $6, I do it. But if it were $1, I would probably use it a lot more. And I think many other people would too, because in many cases it's direct. I also think this has a huge impact on the Silver Line, because the Silver Line that ends at Dulles Airport is right next to the Greenway. And in many cases, this would be a very convenient road. The Trip 2 operators I know have studied this, and I'm not going to, I don't want to say disparage them because it's a difficult decision because there's a lot of unknowns in this. And the eastern bound ones, the ones that my constituents frankly are paying a lot for, are the most used entrances and exits. But I personally believe it would benefit everyone, and they would make more money if we did that.
I thank the gentleman.
Chairman.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, just parliamentary inquiry. Have we adopted the substitute now?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Other questions from the committee? Let's move on to those who have joined us virtually. Do we have anyone online who would like to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1259?
I think we do, Mr. Chair. Leo Rogers, please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you today on Senate Bill 1259. 1259 provides a measured and appropriate consumer protection for users of the Greenway. The Greenway operator is a public service corporation under the Act. And what we've done is use similar standards that other public service corporations are held to and regulated under the SEC standards in order to make the amendments that we do have in Senate Bill 1259. Let me start with a little history. The original operator of the Greenway promised very low tolls. That made sense. The road cost less than $400 million to build, and there was 60 years to pay that off. After 25 years of collecting tolls, the Greenway has more than $1 billion in debt and claims liabilities of another $7 billion. That's $8 billion after collecting tolls for 25 years. This alleged debt is the justification for why the Greenway has increased its tolls 12 times in the last 15 years and has resulted in fewer actual drivers using the Greenway. This is while Loudoun County's population has grown from less than 90,000 in 1990 to over 420,000 today.
Wow.
The result has been that Loudoun County and the Commonwealth has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to have to improve local roads. When the act was passed, there was an operating agreement between VDOT and the operator of the Greenway. That in no way, shape, or form is being violated by amendments to the act. You may hear the Greenway say today that this change to the act is either unconstitutional or violates a contract. That is not correct. There is no basis for that allegation. From a constitutional perspective, there's no taking and there's no contract that is being changed. In the act itself, the Greenway has amended the act to provide an automatic toll escalator back in 2009. The act can be changed just as the General Assembly would change any act that is regulating a public service company. I want to briefly touch on the refinancing provisions in this act. What it does is provides SEC oversight. Debt has been one of the biggest issues. So it requires that the debt needs to be reasonable, protect the consumer, not result in a toll rate increase, only for the term that they are allowed to charge tolls for their operating license, and it must be in the public interest. In addition, there's other regulations that Senator Bell has touched on with regard to materially discouraging use. And I will note that on lines 90 and 91 of the bill, there is a restriction on how many times the operator of the Greenway can come back and request toll rate increases. There's no requirement that the SEC do this each year, but there would be a restriction on the number of times annually it would be that the Greenway can request toll rate increases. We have tried to work with the Greenway. We have tried to amend the bill and make suggestions to them, and we have made amendments. But the Greenway does not support the legislation. This is the same legislation that went through the House, and we do support that provision as well. There are other restrictions that's in the bill. I want to state is for the transfer of the license, and for that, we wanted to set very clear standards as how you would amend or transfer the operator's license. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Thank you. Who do we have next who wants to speak in favor of the bill?
Grafton DeBooth, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Grafton DeButz. I'm representing the Loudoun County Chamber of Commerce. as well as the Loudon CEO cabinet. I'd just like to say that the high tolls on the Dulles Greenway have demonstrably caused a reduction in traffic on the road, and because of that, has actually led to more traffic on our local roads and through our neighborhoods as they attempt to get to and through Loudoun County to their destinations. Because of the increase in traffic on our local roads, our county actually has now been forced to invest in what are called greenway alternatives, where we actually have a transportation strategy to help alleviate what is happening on our local roads because of the avoidance of the Dulles Greenway. So for those reasons, this road has become a liability in our community rather than what it should be, which is an economic asset for those who use it for their employment, for access to the Dulles Airport, as well as our future metro stations.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it. We have another.
Mr. Chair, we have one more. David Ramadan, please unmute and go ahead.
Delegate Ramadan, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, so good to see you, though virtually. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you,
Move to pass
David.
the bill by for the day.
Mr. Chairman, senators, former colleagues, sorry that we are talking via Zoom here. I would have loved to be down there and say hello and stop by your offices and visit with you all. And before we talk about this bill, I truly thank you for your continuous service. You lasted longer than I have, and I know that the toll that takes on you and your families, especially in these times. So my thanks as a citizen to all of your service. On this bill, Mr. Chairman, I am here as Citizen Ramadan to support a bill put forward by my former political opponent, then my successor in the 87th district in the House, who moved on to the other side of the hallway to your side. And this same bill has been put by his successor and my successor, also Delegate Subramaniam from the 87th district on the House side. This is the first time you'll see three former delegates that are of two political parties come together with every other elected official in Loudoun County, all the Board of Supervisors, unanimously Republicans and Democrats. After 8 years of fighting this issue, all of us came together this year and said, look, let's once and for all do something here that works for everybody. Now, let me tell you, Senator Bell and Delegate Subramaniam are nicer people than me. I put in
Everybody's nicer than you.
Ayes and nays.
I love you too, brother. They are nicer people than me. They had put together a bill that is narrower and much more gracious and put together many concessions to the Greenway that my initial bill didn't give them. We learned through this process. I can't thank enough Senator Stanley, and I know his head is already too big for this stuff, but I can't thank enough Senator Stanley who fought this fight with me, and we took it all the way to the Virginia Supreme Court. We learned from that 3-year process, senators and Mr. Chairman, that there's some problems in the code that were never defined properly. And all what Senator Bell is doing with this bill at this point is to define the materially discouraged issue and say, enough is enough on more debt. A $300 million road, as you heard from the counties, and I'm not sure if he was identified correctly, Leo Roger is the attorney for Loudoun County. He was speaking on behalf of the county and the Board of Supervisors. $300 million road ended up with billions of debt. It's not really debt per se, it's debt on the road, but it's a hedge fund from Australia that cashed in that money. They cashed $7 billion and we are paying the note on it. And that's why they're so high. What this bill does is it defines what materially discouraged means. And it says, if you're gonna take more debt, one, you can't take junk bonds. You gotta keep certain ratings of the bonds. Two, you can do this only yearly because we don't want another 5, 10, 20 years. And all of us are opposed to anything more than 1 year. No more than 1 year at a time. You can ask for a toll, and then that toll cannot materially discourage more than 3% discouragement of the road. That's common sense. That's just saying, please don't raise this anymore. And this, Mr. Chairman, is in your hands now, and fellow senators. there is in your hands to solve for Loudoun County. It really comes down to fairness.
Okay, thank you.
With Loudoun, or do we can't stand with the Australians? Just two more small comments, Mr. Chairman. Former version of this has been co-patroned by several of the, or every Republican member of the chamber 2 years ago, when Senator Stanley graciously also put in the bill, not only acting as a lawyer on the previous years. And now I know that several have co-patroned this bill, Senator Favola and Senator Boysko. So I truly urge you to please pass it. Please pass it unanimously. Once and for all, give us a chance not to pay even more taxes, or I'm sorry, more tolls when we are dealing with this, and it can be solved.
Okay,
Thanks for
Delegate
keeping it
Ramadan.
brief, Dave.
Good to see you. There you go. All right, those who are opposed to the bill, we have someone online?
No, Mr. Chair. At this time, no one's hands are raised.
Excuse me?
At this time, no other hands are raised.
Move to report.
That seems to do it.
Move to report.
To report in second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, excuse me. Yeah,
Does
let's-
it doesn't
let's
have to
do
go
it
to
on the board
finance,
here.
right?
Yeah.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Ayes 12, noes 3. I would say, Senator Bell, I will be reaching out to some folks to make sure that the SEC does not end up being abused in this process, and if anything that needs to be done on the floor, I'll take a look at that. But
Mr.
for right
Chairman.
now, I think we're in good shape. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
Senator Favola.
I will just say, I mean, I too have the greatest respect for the SEC, but they really are very used to these kinds of things, and then once they delve into it, they'll have a base of knowledge. This will not become a burdensome effort every year because it will be the same context that they're looking at. So I wouldn't fret too much, but I do appreciate your concern.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add to that.
Senator Boysko.
I'd just like to remember that the people who live in our community are suffering because we haven't been able to fix this, and I certainly wouldn't want to impede their ability for improvement.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Boysko. Your next bill, Senate Bill 1260.
Last words, Mr. Chairman. This should be quick. Thanks to Mr. Senator Obenshain for working with me on this amendment. I think we have peace in the valley. I think he would offer the amendment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt a committee substitute, and while it's coming up, I think it does 4 things, and we...
Let's get it before us. We have a motion for a substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Substitutes before us.
Yeah, the 4 different things that this does is it provides a 30-day notice. It amends both code sections so that it promotes uniformity, the municipality code section and the highway code section. It requires the notice to go out on the official letterhead of the condemning authority, and it allows an owner to respond in writing in order to expedite the entry onto the land. So I thank Senator Bell. I think it's a bill that achieves his purposes and protects the rights of property owners as well.
Thank you, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. Chairman, just so briefly say, to my knowledge, we have no opposition with this amendment, and I thank the Senator from Rockingham for his help.
Anyone out in the virtual world who is watching this bill?
Chair, there are no hands raised at this time.
All right.
Move to report.
Operate on a motion. We have a motion to report. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay. Let's vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bill reports. Senator Stewart, are you out in the hallway?
He is.
Could you send Senator Stewart in, and then we'll deal with Senator Newman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about the airplane bill.
Worried about my airplanes.
All those Falwell airplanes flying out of Falwell Airport.
That's right.
But that's a different Falwell, though, isn't it?
All right, Senator Stewart, we have Senate Bill 1144, and we've heard this bill in our last session, and we took it by for you to work on possible solution. Understand you may have, if you could quickly just advise everybody of what the bill is about and then what your solution is. Could we have someone move the substitute? All in favor of moving the substitute, putting the substitute before us, say aye. Opposed? Substitute's before us. Senator Stewart.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, is your mic on, Senator?
It was not, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. And so what the substitute now simply does is it amends lines 13, 14, 15, and 16 by striking a little bit of language, but then adding, including any credit granted pursuant to Section 58.1-1504 against such tax, comma, such aircraft registration shall be considered the licensure required by such chapter. And so what that means is, and I know that Mark Flynn is on, and he's probably explained it better than I can. My effort here is to give the powers that be, i.e. tax and Mark Flynn, the authority and maybe a little bit of discretion to determine that taxes paid in another state, you should be able to get credit for, at least in Virginia, so that we are not double taxing people. That is all this bill does now. I've completely gutted the other one. And I think that I've reached somewhat of peace in the valley, but at least for the folks that I've talked to, I have. But there may be others, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
I have a question from Senator
Favola.
Favola.
Senator Stewart, I can appreciate you wouldn't want somebody to be double taxed, if you will. They pay taxes in one state. Is there an implicit reciprocal agreement then that Virginia would, that some taxes would be given to Virginia?
So
or we're just going to come up short?
The issue is this: if your plane is in Virginia for 90 days out of the year, doesn't have to be 90 consecutive days, but if you fly into Virginia 90 days, you are considered to be based in Virginia for purposes of sales tax. However, what the tax code says is you can consider taxes paid elsewhere sales tax.
That's the current code.
Yes, but you can't consider other taxes that may be paid, such as a leasing agreement or something. We're just trying to arrive at a place of fairness so that if someone is in fact paying their taxes, they shouldn't be double taxed again in Virginia simply because they're trying to do business in Virginia.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate the senator bringing forward this version. It solves all of my problems. I will tell you this. So years ago, I put in a piece of legislation that actually reduced the aircraft tax. The net effect of it, and worked with John Chichester on it, was it raised the amount coming into the Commonwealth. Richard, I believe that the way you've crafted this, it's actually probably going to raise the amount coming into the Commonwealth because now you're going to have people that are going to file in both states. And so a certain amount of time, like you do with income tax today, is going to be paid to Virginia, and the other part's going to be paid for other states. So I think that what you've done is pretty crafty, and I think it'll end up with more money coming back in.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Questions?
Cosgrove.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. And I appreciate Senator Stewart working on this because I was not enamored with the first one. But I have talked with the folks at the Department of Aviation, and they seem to be okay with this as well. So I appreciate him going through this effort and bringing a better product.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have you, Senator Stewart, have you had a chance to talk to Dulles Airport? I know that they were reaching out to me earlier, letting me know that they had serious concerns with your original bill. Is there peace there?
I've not spoken directly with Dulles Airport. I will tell you that Dulles Airport would have been very concerned about my original bill.
Yes, they were.
And most every airport in the state. And there was a reason I filed that bill the way I filed it. This bill, I do not believe Dulles, I can't speak for them, but I do not believe they would have any concerns with this bill.
Mr. Chairman, I think if you ask Mr. Flynn to speak to it, I think that he will alleviate any concerns.
Any other, first off, any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Lisa's trying to get your attention.
Lisa.
Sorry. Mr. Chairman, I just, to sort of indirectly answer some of the questions the committee has had, if I can put my finance hat on for a minute. Our tax code currently allows for a credit for taxes paid in other states against the airplane tax. And so all this bill is doing, it's not creating a new credit for taxes paid or anything like that. It's just simply trying to marry up the provisions in 5.1 relating to paying the tax and the provisions in 58.1 about actually paying the tax. So really all this substitute's doing is creating a cross-reference. It's not changing any existing law. I just wanted to make sure the committee was not confused by that.
That was very helpful.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. Any other questions from the committee? If not, could we have Mr. Flynn?
Mr. Chair, we do. Mark Flynn, please unmute and go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mark Flynn, Department of Aviation. Really appreciate the work that Senator Stewart did. The concerns we had with the introduced version are all taken care of, as has been said. The substitute, the administration has no position on, but again, this bill does not do any harm to the ability of the department and the Commonwealth to provide funding to airports. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Is there anyone else on the call?
Mr. Chair, no. There are no other hands raised.
Okay. Senator Stewart, just one follow-up issue. Are we tax paid in one state, tax paid in this state? It would be for the same type of tax. We're not having a tax of one kind in one state and one in another?
That was part of the question, Mr. Chairman, and that's why I believe that this may give folks a little more discretion as to the kind of taxes that are paid in another state, to give them credit for that for tax that could be paid in Virginia.
Because there's different taxes, there are use taxes, there are sales taxes, lease taxes, things like that. But this bill gives the flexibility, to allow for a tax being paid in one state to offset something you're doing in Virginia, and they may not be called the same thing.
That is what we hope, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Operate on the motion. Do we have a motion on the bill? Yeah. Do you have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, would you open the roll? And we do have to send it to finance. I'm sorry. Can we amend the motion to Senator Spruill to?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Lisa. I spoke with the Senate Finance Committee, and they indicated that if you adopted the substitute by Senator Stewart, they would no longer need to see the bill.
All right, there we go. So the motion before us is good. Senator Stewart is a magician, and clerk, would you open the roll? Record your vote. All right.
That Republican voted no.
We have, could you report the vote?
Ayes 13, noes 1, 1 abstention.
13, 1, and 1. The bill is reported. Thank you very much, Senator Stewart. And now we have Senator Newman with a last-minute entry from the Department of Motor Vehicles. And Senator Newman looks thrilled with it.
Yep, this is Senate Bill 1474. As I understand it, was supposed to be your bill, and I got stuck with it. Mr. Chairman, a number of years ago when I was chairman of this committee, we put together the major salvage study, and we implemented an act. I guess it was in 2016, then through 2017. We did put an end date on that, expiration date of 2021. There was a desire, I understand, to come together and have some discussions about this before the expiration, but that was not possible given the year. What this bill does is this bill extends it for one more year. I've heard from some of the opponents, and I'm sure have been out diligently lobbying you, And I've indicated that I'd be glad to add to this a requirement that we go back and look at the current best practices and look at other states and reconsider this way. Mr. Chairman, I will not carry that bill, but I hope that one of you guys will. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like for the committee to at least consider the amendment and a substitute. The substitute really just cleans up some language that is old in the code, and I think Lisa has those items, sir.
Can we get the substitute before us? Have a motion?
Move the substitute.
Have a motion to and a second to have the substitute before us. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Substitutes before us. Lisa, could you report the substitute?
Mr. Chairman, the substitute does not make any substantive changes. It's merely formatting because this bill was a late-breaking bill and it didn't go through the normal DLS process. So that's all the substitute is formatting.
Okay. So, Senator Newman, could you just walk us through very quickly what the bill does?
So, as some of you will recall who were still around at that time, the salvage law in Virginia was a real mess, and everyone was in favor, including the state police, the automobile dealers, and others wanted to come together and find a solution. Rick Holcomb at the time put together a group. There was a group, which includes some of the salvage people that contacted you that didn't care as much for the bill, but we put it together. It was much better, and it stayed in place for many years. This bill simply extends the sunset for 1 year. Does not take the sunset off, and with the amendments we have, we will be looking for other opportunities over the next year, and I believe that the Commissioner, Rick Holcomb, is on to indicate such. So.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, question for the patron. Could you help us understand what the salvage community had problems with? I happen to have one of those companies in my district, and I know that they've reached out to me with some serious concerns about it, but I'm hoping you could help explain that to us.
Well, I may let them do it. I have talked to them, and I told them about the study, because here's, I think, the worst-case scenario. The worst-case scenario is the bill just goes away, and we go back to that old confusing way we had before, and that's why I think they came to the chairman to have the 1-year extension, is even though they may not like it the way it is, it was almost not workable before. As I understand it, and they can tell you better, is the number of salvage certificates has gone up and the number of non-repairables have gone down, which means they don't have as many spare parts coming off of these vehicles that normally would go to non-repairable. But that's my understanding of their concern. My concern really is here again, I didn't want to necessarily get involved in salvage again, but if we just allow it to expire, we go back to the old mess. And so that's kind of where we were. There wasn't enough time. Literally, they came to me with hours left to put the bill in and ask for the extension. So, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, maybe Commissioner Holcomb might be able to shed some light.
Certainly. But first, any other questions from the committee? Okay, could we have Commissioner Holcomb?
Richard Holcomb, please unmute and go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Rick Holcomb, DMV Commissioner, and the Senator. First of all, we appreciate him offering to help us on this occasion. Let me tell you, salvage is probably the most studied subject that we have ever undertaken. Since I've been back, and I came back under Governor McDonald in 2010, we studied it in 2014, we studied it in 2016, we studied it in 2019. I will tell you, before I came back, we studied it in 2004, we studied it in 2007, 2008, and 2009. Senator Newman was absolutely right. Salvage was a mess. We think we've got a solution. We've had that solution in place since 2017. We're now facing a sunset clause, a sunset this July. If Senator Newman's bill is not moved forward and given us another year to look at this again and try to figure out how we can get peace in the valley, we will revert back to the old system, meaning that everyone will have to file an estimate of repairs. That means the insurance company, salvage dealers will need to do that. I will tell you, with this new process, we've eliminated 1.5 positions. So I'm going to have to find money somewhere in the budget if this bill doesn't go through and give us a reprieve for 1 more year. I'm going to have to find money to hire those people to go through all the paperwork that all these businesses are going to have to start resubmitting. So all this is doing, I know that there's disagreement. There's been a disagreement every time we've done a study. And I was hoping to never have to do anything else on salvage, but under Senator Newman's request, absolutely. If we're given one more year, we will look at this again and see if we can convince the individuals that don't like this on something. But I'll tell you, the not doing this is probably going to be more damaging than at least giving us another year to look at it. So that's where we are. It's a simple extending the sunset. It's not making this making the 2017 proposal permanent. It's just giving us one more year to further look at this. So. The committee can do whatever they want, but I'm just not sure how I'm going to be able to respond to all the additional work that'll come in if we go back to the way things were in 2017.
Thank you, Commissioner
Mr. Chairman,
Holcomb.
more than happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you, Mr. Holcomb. Is there any concern that any history here of vehicles being on the road that shouldn't be there and are dangerous because of the current situation we're in?
Mr. Chairman, all I can do is let the numbers speak for themselves. Salvage certificates have gone up from 14,000 to about 79,000. When you have a salvage certificate, it's my understanding you can either sell that to salvage dealers for parts, you can rebuild it, or you can junk it. So to me, I think that this is saying that you're not having more dangerous cars going on the road. On the rebuilt inspections, those did go up by 3,000. But any car that's going on the road has to have a Virginia safety inspection. So we're not seeing evidence that this has led to unsafe cars going on the road. But if there is, we'll look at it for the next year because I don't think. I don't think that is a slam dunk. I don't think that is an uncontested argument that would necessitate us scrapping this and going back to a very ineffective or inefficient, paper-intensive process.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, we've heard from the bill. Senator Favola.
Commissioner Holcomb, I think along with others have been contacted by the salvage community, and I just want to hear your view on where you think the study is going to end. The folks who are talking to me feel pretty strongly that DMV is not willing to compromise, and I want to give you a chance to rebut that.
Senator, like I said, we have studied this issue more than any other issue. If there are folks who don't think that we do a fair, impartial study of an issue, I'd love to see a bill that moves salvage to some other agency. Maybe the state police can take it over. But ask the insurance industry, ask the automobile dealer industry. I know that the VADA is in here, is on to talk in favor of continuing the sunset. So again, I do whatever the committee can do whatever they want. If you want to go back to the other process, we can do that. We'll take people off the front line to help with this very labor-intensive process. I'm offended that people think the DMV is not open-minded and fair in this. We have whatever y'all want to do, just that's fine. We'll deal with whatever the consequences are. But I do think you need to ask the consumers, what do they think? When you've got such expensive cars, I just took my BMW in, and I've got one little computer error that's going to cost me $4,300. So when you have one very expensive component of your car damaged, that might be the percentage to the point that your car cannot be rebuilt. There you're going to have some upset consumers that are going to start calling you when we go back to the old process. So I think there's enough question out there to keep the status quo where it is for another year. If not, that's like I said, we'll do whatever the General Assembly tells us on this.
All right. Well, we don't like looking backwards here on the Transportation Committee. Any other comments or questions from the committee? All right. Operate on a motion.
Mr. Chairman, is there anybody that wants to speak in opposition to
Yeah,
this?
we had opposition.
Steve, there is? Excuse me. I'm sorry. I thought there was no one.
They're coming in now. Robert Bohannon, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rob Bohannon here, speaking on behalf of LKQ Corporation. LKQ provides aftermarket and salvage auto parts that are often used to repair vehicles and accidents, and they operate a number of facilities across Virginia in Sterling, Chesapeake, Dumfries, and Bedford County. They purchase salvage and non-repairable vehicles and sell and distribute those parts. I want to clarify a couple of things, and Senator Newman's right. There have been numerous studies of the salvage industry. One concern that we had is this particular issue that this bill addresses. This was part of the 2016, I believe, salvage study that was a very specific charge from then Chairman Carrico and then House Transportation Committee Chairman Villanueva to look at some very specific issues. The concern we have about the process is we were in that process with a bunch of stakeholders, and then this particular issue dealing with non-repairable vehicles was added into that process. It was not part of the charge letter from the committee chair, so we were sort of caught blindsided from that perspective when the issue came up. But we had requested in 2017 when this bill passed that DMV include language to study how this would impact the pool of non-repairable vehicles. And keep in mind, these are vehicles that are so badly damaged, they're never allowed to go back on the road. A non-repairable certificate is like a death certificate for a car. We were concerned that this would severely deplete the pool of non-repairable vehicles. And the December 2020 report that this committee received showed us exactly what we thought. The amount of non-repairable vehicles has dropped drastically every year and continues to go down. We had actually said back in 2017 that if we were wrong about this, had told DMV, look, we'll help support, get a sponsor for a bill that lifts the sunset, and we'll walk away. In the 3 years prior to the enactment of the 2017 law, the pool of salvage and non-repairable vehicles, these badly damaged vehicles, they were about 50-50. You have the data. I sent around something this morning that showed that chart that DMV included in their report. So this law goes into effect, then it goes down drastically. The next year, it's about 91% salvage, 9% non-repairable. Now in the last fiscal year, we're at 96% salvage, 4% non-repairable. And Commissioner Holcomb had mentioned that, they mentioned this was their request because they dealt with a number of cars. I think they said about 50 or 60 a year that came in from out of state that may have different standards for salvage and non-repairable. And they were trying to reconcile the paperwork internally, and that took staff time and energy. Well, what we've done is we've made a policy change to accommodate for those 50 or 60 vehicles. And now we have potentially thousands of vehicles that may have been previously deemed non-repairable, i.e. not able to go back on the road, that may be in that salvage marketplace and have the potential to be rebuilt and potentially go back on the road. I think it's important to also understand that looking at the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators best practices manual on salvage and junk vehicles, they have a December 2019 best practices report, and the report states when vehicles are unbranded or underbranded, they are more susceptible for sale by individuals offering them for sale for more than their true value, by individuals who can superficially repair the vehicle and offer them for resale without disclosing prior damage, or by criminals who can use the clean title paperwork to cover stolen vehicles and stolen parts. The report goes on to say, however, many jurisdictions do not offer a junk brand or designation. In other states, the definition is highly subjective and the threshold is not well defined, which is what we have here in Virginia currently, or the determination is left entirely to the owner. No junk non-repairable brand or designation means vehicles that are significantly damaged and should be intended for permanent destruction are sold with ownership documents that allow for repair of the vehicle or the use of paperwork, which increases the opportunity for numerous types of fraud. Again, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. Certainly, I think there are many reputable salvage rebuilders in Virginia who do things right, who follow all the rules and procedures that are out there. I think the concern is that you have people who could take advantage when you have vehicles that are in the salvage marketplace that may not, maybe should not be there. We think that reinstating a threshold of some sort is critical for ensuring the safety of all Virginians and equipping all potential buyers with the knowledge of the history of the vehicle they may purchase. And we're open to discussing what that threshold may be. We think the one that was in place in 2017 is good and works. But we have said, look, if there's something that's maybe higher, taking into account some other issues, we're happy to have that discussion, but we think a standard needs to be in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Very, very comprehensive. And if you have such a suggestion next year, we'd be glad to entertain that kind of legislation. Anyone else here to speak?
Ann Gambardella, please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Ann Gambardella for the Virginia Auto Dealers Association. We've been involved in the salvage issue over the many times, as the commissioner noted, and would just say that we agree that it given the light of the circumstances of the last year, a one-year extension seems very logical so that everyone can take a look at all the information that's been generated out of these reports and come together and make a decision. It's been my experience at studies at DMV, though we may not always agree with every outcome, they do involve all stakeholders. Their process is very fair. They note where there's no consensus on an issue. And to be candid on this particular issue, you have one person that doesn't like it. That's sort of what we've come down to in the last couple of salvage studies. So we would support extending this for another year, even though, like the commissioner, I don't look forward to a lot more salvage meetings, but we'll do what we've got to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else to speak on the bill?
At this time, Mr. Chair, no.
Thank you very much. Sounds like a reasonable suggestion, especially given the year that we've had with the pandemic. I understand the concerns of Mr. Bohannon and his community to keep that as a viable industry, and we don't want dangerous cars on the road. But let's see what they can come up with in terms of a new threshold. Would seem to me to be a good idea. Do we have a motion on the bill? Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, could you open the roll? Ayes in favor, nays against?
Ayes 8, noes 6, 1 abstention.
Ayes 8, noes 6, 1 abstention. The bill reports. It does not have to go to finance. And so thank you very much, Senator Newman. Senator Barker is here, I believe. All right. Senator Barker, you have Senate Bill 1470. Tell us about the bill.
Yes, I have Senate Bill 1470. It's a bill that actually was brought to me by a student at Centerville High School as part of a class project that they were doing there on things. It deals with individuals who have a disability that can impair communications, and it's related to someone who would be in a vehicle. So it deals with registration and identifications on either a driver's license, if an individual has a driver's license, or an individual who has a special card that provides this information. The genesis of it is individuals such as someone on the autism spectrum, or someone who has a hearing loss, significant hearing loss, or other types of things that can impair their ability to communicate effectively with law enforcement if law enforcement stops a vehicle and they're in that vehicle. The student who brought me the bill, and I think she's on the line so she can testify on this later, she's expressed had concern about the impact of someone who has a communication problem and also may have some type of behavioral or intellectual disability. So it could be someone with an autism spectrum, it could be someone with an intellectual disability. Unfortunately, in situations where the law enforcement is not aware that there's an individual in the vehicle that has that type of communication disability, sometimes those things escalate pretty quickly, and there actually have been instances including a couple in the metropolitan Washington area where individuals who were either on the autism spectrum or had an intellectual disability were killed in a conflict with police. Sometimes they reacted in a way that the police thought that they were trying to harm them for no reason, and were unaware that the individual had the disability from the autism spectrum or the intellectual disability that led them to act in ways that was not normal behavior. What the bill does is it allows there to be an indication on registration for a vehicle that there is someone who is a frequent passenger in the vehicle and who has this type of communication difficulty, as well as to have it already on the driver's license or as to a special card that the individual who would not be necessarily driving because they don't have a driver's license, but would be a passenger on a regular basis. Once, if a vehicle is stopped and an officer, sees the registration or a card that shows the communication disability, the hope is, and certainly the evidence in some other states where this type of thing has been tried thus far, is that there will no longer be these frequent conflicts between the law enforcement officer and the individual, because the law enforcement officer will respond in a different way.
Okay.
So it's a way to try to prevent those types of conflicts getting out of hand and someone being either injured or killed.
My recollection's a little faulty, but I thought we had passed something that allowed for an indication on a driver's license.
Yes,
that exists, but not for the registration.
Right. So this deals with registration and would also cover the driver's license or a card that the individual would have. We do have a line amendment, basically changing one sentence that was recommended by DMV here.
Oh, okay. Could we, Lisa, could you report the line amendment?
Yes, sir. I'm posting it on now, and I will read it for the committee.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and post it, and then if you could.
Yes, sir. So it should be posting to LIS now. The amendment on the bill as introduced is on line 18, after communication period, strike the remainder of line 18 and all of lines 19, 20, and 21. And then in its place, insert on any application on which the applicant indicates that a person who will regularly occupy his vehicle has such a disability, the department may require the applicant to certify that he has the consent of the regular occupant of the vehicle to release information pursuant to subsection D.
Okay, and that amendment comes from DMV?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Who's that?
Eben.
Senator Eben.
Well, I guess I should move the amendment first, and I had a question.
Okay. Senator Eben moves the amendment. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The amendment's before us. Senator Eben.
Yeah, for Senator Barker, I'm a little confused because if there's already an indication on the driver's license that a individual has a communications challenge or impaired communications at times, why do we need it on the registration? Is this for people who are not driving?
Yeah, because this is basically designed to try to protect an individual who does not have a driver's license, doesn't drive anywhere, and in many instances it's could be someone a little bit younger than driver's age, but also in several of the incidents that we've had around the metropolitan Washington area, it's been an individual who was often a young adult and who was basically was a passenger in the vehicle on a regular basis, but not someone who was actually a licensed driver because of their communication disability and whatever other disabilities they may have had related to things in particular. I mean, the two that sort of stand out are intellectual disabilities and autism spectrum.
And to follow up, so in other words, an officer might pull over a car and question a passenger,
right?
And that's the problem. And this
Yeah,
really happens, and it has happened that it's been a difficulty.
Yeah. So in some instances, I mean, you're going to have an officer who pulls over a vehicle, may start talking with the driver, and the passenger who may be a little agitated, a little worried, why is the police stopping my car here, may try to jump out of the car and confront the officer in a way that the officer, if the officer has no idea that there's someone who has that type of problem, they might respond with a lot more force than they would in this situation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Holcomb, believe wanted to also comment on that issue. Commissioner Holcomb, are you there?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Rick Holcomb, DMV Commissioner, and the body will remember that last year the Senate passed House Bill 1666, authored by patron Vice Delegate Haynes, that put it on the registration card because one of the things is law enforcement can pull up by that license plate the registration and know before they even approach the car. So we agreed that it made perfectly good sense to put it on the registration as well. However, in the Hayes bill, we only said that the owner or the owner of the car would need to have this condition. Absolutely, this is a good bill. It fills in a little bit of a gap that we didn't correct last year under the Hayes bill by saying or an occupant. The amendment which y'all have adopted, we just got a little uncomfortable with the owner of the car passing on private health information of the occupant when we did not know whether the occupant gave that consent. So that's why we've taken that out of the language. While we have no formal position on this, this really does fill a gap that is necessary, and we hope that the committee will support the bill as amended.
Commissioner Holcomb, so in other words, if you put it on the registration, that's consent.
Yeah. Well, it just lets folks know that I'm the owner of the car, but I have a frequent passenger who is also in that car. So the law enforcement would know even before they approach the car and check someone's license that okay, this is a person that probably needs a little bit more attention. So we think it's a great compliment to what y'all did last year with the Hayes bill. I can also tell you there's a House companion, House Bill 1960, which has passed the House 99-0 that is headed to your committee, and so. Hope that the committee will take the same type of action on the senator's bill.
Thank you, Commissioner Holcomb. And Senator Barker, you said you had an individual who suggested this that wanted to speak.
Yeah, the girl that brought this bill, brought this idea to me, I think wanted to speak. So, Anna.
Is Anna on the line? Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
Anna, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm the senior from Centerville High School who brought this bill to Senator Barker. What inspired me about this bill was, I don't know if you know about Matthew Russian's case, but he was a Black autistic engineering student in Virginia Beach who was sentenced to 10 years of 50-year sentence for second-degree attempted murder from a non-fatal car accident. While we don't know what could have happened if this law was in place, I feel like it may have altered the situation if the officer knew that that Matthew had autism before approaching the car. And I have a little sister with autism, and I know a lot about how it's like when an officer approaches you while you have an individual who may act a little funny or not be able to communicate well. It can often be a little scary. You know, the officer doesn't have any ill intent, but it's also, there's a lot of miscommunication that can occur. And I feel like this bill will help both the officers be more prepared to interact with these individuals, and also for the individuals and the caregivers and whoever's with those individuals in the car, help them feel more safe and secure when interacting with officers.
Well, Anna, thank you very much. This was a very thoughtful and helpful idea. I think you gave us great confidence that the next generation is engaged in solving problems, and we appreciate that very, very much. Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I'm ready to make a motion if you're ready for one.
I just wanted to check to see if there was anyone else.
No, Mr. Chair.
Senator Favola.
Well, I think Anna really persuaded me. And this bill is definitely something that will, I think, perhaps prevent some some unfortunate situations and ease interactions with our police officers. And that's really what we should be about. So I moved that we report the bill.
Second to report the bill. Clerk, would you open the roll? All in favor, vote aye. Opposed, no.
Lionel.
Sproul.
Okay.
Ayes 13, noes 1, 1 abstention.
Ayes 13, nays 1, 1 abstention. The bill reports. Thank you, Senator Barker. Next up, we have Senator Suderline. And while Senator Suderline is taking the podium, we also have a bill by Senator Pillion that was originally filed by our dear friend, Senator Chafin. And I would just move that that we just keep this bill in the breast of the committee. It has not received the appropriate number of people pledging to or purchasing the plate. So without objection, we'll just hold this bill in the breast of the committee. And with that,
Mr. Chairman, before we
yes. I guess it's a carryover motion, yeah, but we can't carry over, but I would just... left in the breast of the committee.
What does that mean? It's just always with us?
It just goes, and we'll see what happens next year if they get enough, if they get enough license, if they get enough applicants.
Mr. Chairman, may I continue? May I continue?
Yes,
All right,
Senator
thank you.
Cosgrove.
I'd have to ask Senator Pillion. I believe the purpose of his bill is to eliminate the prepaid requirement. Is that correct or not?
I was told, I perhaps didn't read it correctly.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Lisa.
the bill was to introduce a special license plate, and part of this particular bill would have been to not have the requirement of 450 signatures.
Oh, I see.
But it's a new special license plate.
Okay, so we have a motion to report. We have a second? Motion to report and a second, and the bill does exclude the requirement.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry, I thought we had a discussion last committee about this exemption. I think Senator Cosgrove had that as well.
Had what, Senator McPike?
That this committee does not take on exemptions.
And Senator Cosgrove?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, where I was going with this, basically, I wanted to make sure that that Senator Pillion's bill was properly presented. Basically, I can't support it because we don't usually drop the prepaid requirements. I just wanted to make sure that it was properly heard before the committee.
And in that regard, do you want testimony on the bill?
Huh? If Senator Pillion's here and wants to talk to it, sure.
I don't
Mr.
believe
Chairman.
Senator Pillion is here.
Mr. Chairman.
Who we have? Senator Stanley?
Mr. Chairman, understanding Senator Cosgrove's longstanding belief that we should make those kind of exemptions, I would say only this. When it came to the spearhead trails, I think all of us, knowing the history of Ben Chafin, as certainly as we all do, he was a big leader of the Spearhead Trail, was a big proponent of it, whether it be in the Tobacco Commission or here, or whether it was at the head of the Spearhead Trails. While we can't put a license plate with Ben Chafin's name on it, I think this is fitting and appropriate for his memory in something that he held so dear and so important to the revitalization of the economy and the enjoyment of all that was good and natural about where he lived. So for that reason, I move to report.
Do we have a second? Lisa, would this have to go to finance?
Mr. Chairman, no, sir.
Okay, the answer is no. So essentially what we're voting on here is to exempt this particular plate from the requirement?
Who
Is that
seconded the bill?
Substitute motion. Substitute motion.
Substitute motion, Senator Peake?
That we hold this bill in the breast of the committee.
Second.
Okay. Substitute motion is we hold this bill in the breast of the committee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. The bill is held in the breast of the committee. Senator Suderline. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have Senate Bill 1160.
Yes. Senate Bill 1160, as I introduced it, seeks to serve the liability protection originally inserted into the code 4 years ago for towing and recovery operators, but act at the direction of the Commonwealth. But there's a substitute, and I think that's relevant for the larger discussion of this, so I would first move the substitute.
Do you have a second for moving the substitute?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the substitute is before us, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The substitute was also emailed to all the members earlier in the week, so I hope you've had a chance to look at it. In a little bit, I'm going to ask Commissioner Holcomb to speak to the second part of the substitute that changes the mechanics lien process after a 2-year study that was led by the Department of Motor Vehicles. The original bill that I sent that is still also before you in this larger substitute addresses the program I mentioned that was created to help, especially in my part of the Commonwealth, where we have wrecks on our interstates that really slow down movement on the interstates significantly. And the goal is to be able to move those wrecks quickly. And in 2017, the General Assembly passed legislation in that effort that authorized contractors to remove the vehicles and any debris from the side of the road or the median, and so that it could reopen faster. And they were allowed to use state right-of-ways like median crossings to do that. The bill also intended to extend some liability protections to the operators acting at the direction of the Commonwealth, but as it passed the General Assembly at that time and what's in the current code, it only affords those protections to operators who fail to act at the direction of the Commonwealth, which is the exact opposite of what we want. So this is important to make sure that we're able to get this program going correctly, and also so that operators can take advantage of it to help make our interstates move quicker. I think you might hear from some other folks about that. This bill, which originally came to me at the request of some of our towers in my area who would like to be able to use this program, but without this protection aren't able to. It's also supported by organizations including the I-81 Trip Operators, the Virginia Association of Towing and Recovery Operators, and the Major Incident Highway Recovery Operators. And before we hear from anyone else, Mr. Chairman, if you'd allow, I'd like to let the Commissioner of DMV explain why they are so strongly in support of the specific portion of the bill that they asked for after their 2 years of study.
Thank you, Senator Suderline. Commissioner Holcomb, are you there?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Rick Holcomb, DMV Commissioner. I'm going to yield to my Assistant Commissioner for Vehicle Services who will talk, but just very briefly, the substitute incorporates recommendations from 2 years worth of study on exactly how we need to bring up our mechanic and storage lien process, modernize it, make it more efficient, take some of the burden off of the companies that submit those applications, and put more of the burden on us to process them. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask Millicent Ford to very briefly go over the substance of our part of the substitute.
Ms. Ford.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you. The proposed changes, I won't repeat what our commissioner has shared about the two-year study, but the proposed changes were agreed upon and recommended by the stakeholders. And they include changes that would simplify aspects of the mechanics and storage lien enforcement process. They shift responsibility from sending certified mail notices to owners and lien holders and posting auction notices from the mechanics and storage lien holder to DMV, facilitates automation of much of the process to ensure consistency, efficiency, and security. It introduces some options to relinquish the lien for the mechanics and storage lien and to submit independent appraisals to prove that the vehicle is worth less than the trade-in value determined by DMV. It also clarifies titling documentation requirements for abandoned vehicles to ensure that auctions are conducted before the vehicle can be titled to a new owner. And lastly, it allows DMV to create a more modernized, a centralized and secure online portal to facilitate both the mechanics, the storage lien, and the AVP processes. The stakeholders agreed that a fee of $40 should apply to the portion of the process requiring DMV to send the certified mail notices, to host the auction notices, and to support the significant effort to develop and maintain the online portal, and also the increased staffing to review certain documentation requirements to respond to inquiries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Mr.
Ford.
Chair.
Questions of Commissioner Holcomb, Ms. Ford, or the patron from the committee?
Second.
We have a motion to report and a second. All in favor, say aye. Okay, well, let's vote on the board. Might be better.
They won't take any testimony.
Oh, excuse me. I thought were there more people on the line?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Let's strike the board. My apologies. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the line who is in favor of the bill? As
Dale Bennett,
as
please
a
unmute.
substitute?
Dale Bennett, please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to first of all thank the patron of the bill. We had some serious concerns about his original bill as introduced, and with the language in the substitute that establishes reasonable as a standard, no play on words intended, but we think that is a much more reasonable standard to apply in this situation. As I have discussed with you, I do want to mention that we've talked with towing operators and others that have some concerns about this new program that's being implemented, and as part of that program, there is no oversight or no regulation of the rates that are charged for these towing and recovery operators to respond to these crashes. They take the vehicle and then hold it and present an invoice, and if the vehicle owner thinks it's excessive or exorbitant, they really have no avenue to have that addressed or adjudicated, except to hire an attorney and go to court. And while we, historically, over the last couple of years, seen the situation get worse and worse with bills in the tens of thousands of dollars, the one that sort of takes the cake was this past August when a trucking company sent us a bill for a recovery of a single vehicle rollover with no hazardous materials on the side of I-64 outside of Richmond, knocked down a mountain embankment. Total invoice was for $202,000. And we just think that is exorbitant, and really want to try to work with you and the committee and the General Assembly to try to bring all the parties involved together. Let's level the playing field a little bit right now, because the vehicle owner is in a no-win situation where they're being held hostage to pay some of these exorbitant bills that are submitted by a few bad actors in the industry. That is not to brush all of the towing and recovery industry with that brush, but there are a few bad actors, and right now it's a wild, wild west, and they're operating and being able to do these things without any accountability. We feel like the General Assembly needs to take a look at that and address that problem. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
But you are speaking in favor of this measure?
Yes, sir. We are now comfortable with this measure. The first part, the second part really doesn't impact us, and appreciate all the parties involved talking to us and helping us better understand the lien part of it. But the first part, as far as is the standard for determining liability in these situations, certainly reasonable is a much better standard and more appropriate than gross negligence, which would be such a high bar. You basically would never be able to prove any liability.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Anyone else in favor of the bill would like to speak?
Matthew Moran, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. I appreciate the committee's work on this. On behalf of the I-81 towing and recovery operators, we support the bill and happy to answer any questions. But if the committee is so moved to take care of this quickly, we are fine with that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else in favor?
Please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Sproul.
The first gentleman kind of got me to shook up now, pertaining to the excessive price for us, these things, how we answering that. The second gentleman, I know he's for because he's making money. But this first gentleman, the excessive price to the patron, what do you got to say about that?
Mr. Chairman, I mean, excuse me, Mr. Senator Sproul, this has been an ongoing problem in terms of what people charge for these towing jobs, and they are sort of left up to the tower to make the decision as to what the price is. And I think Dale Bennett from the Truckers Association has long had a problem that there's no standard for determining what those charges ought to be. You're sort of at, whoever the state police call to come out on the scene and deal with the problem, they seem to set the rates. Is that correct, Mr. Bennett?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I will say, Senator Sproul, that is a much bigger issue that's going to take a lot more work to resolve and address and get all the stakeholders together that can be solved in this bill. We don't have a problem with this bill, and this bill is really not related to that. I just want to take an opportunity to call the committee's attention to it as they're discussed, because they were, in fact, discussing this issue. So we don't have any problem with this bill and look forward to working to coming back in a future session with hopefully a solution that we can all work with.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Sproul.
Please don't let anyone else that supports my bill speak in support of it, please.
Thank you. This has been a long-standing problem for the Truckers Association, and I think it's appropriate that Dale have a chance to alert the committee to this ongoing concern. Senator Sproul.
To the patient, bless his heart, is there any way possible that next year that you could bring us in to answer that question? Because I know it's not part of this bill, but as your favorite Democrat, can you help us out by bringing something next year to address that problem?
We will see what can be done, but you're a member of the Senate Transportation Committee.
I can't recall that. I asked you a question. I'm trying to vote for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Chairman, I move that we report the bill.
Anyone who is opposed?
I second that. I second.
Anyone on the line that's opposed to the bill?
Mr. Chair, there does not seem to be anyone who wishes to speak against the bill.
Okay, could we just have the folks who are in favor of the bill then want to just weigh in with who you are and what your organization is?
Jason Simmons, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. My name is Jason Simmons with Hughes Transport in Buchanan, Virginia. I'm the organizer of the I-81 Trip Operators and the Virginia Vice President of VATRO. I'm just honored to say that both of our organizations are in favor of the bill, and we would like to take this time also to thank the DMV for all their hard work and time that they've devoted to this bill as well.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Anyone else just want to weigh in with?
Craig Biber, please go ahead.
Hi, Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Craig Bieber with MIRA, Major Incident Heavy Recovery Operators Association. I'm also speaking for Matt Benka with the Northern Virginia Towing Association. He's unable to attend today's meeting because of a death in the family. Each of our associations supports this legislation. We'd like to thank Senator Suderline and also thank you, Mr. Chairman, for working with the towing and recovery industry on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And I think this bill's in good shape. Does anyone have anything more to say other than express their support? All right.
motion's before us.
We have a motion to report the bill. Do we have a second? Open the rolls.
Ayes 14, no zero, one abstention.
Ayes 14, no zeros, one abstention. The bill reports. I believe that completes the docket.
Mr. Chairman, we got this from about these people ripping people off on these roads. They are ripping folks off.
All right. With that, the committee will rise.